Welcome to If I'd Only Known, where seasoned online business experts share valuable tips to improve your mindset, increase your revenue, and gain insight on what they would have done if they'd only known what they know now when they started their businesses. And now, your host, Sherry Kaufeld.
Welcome, everyone. Sherry Kaufeld here. I'm so excited today because I get the chance to introduce you to Charles George. Now, Charles, I got to meet fairly recently in an event that we both participated in, and we just became fast friends because we have very similar philosophies. And I can't wait for him to share his wisdom with you today around kind of all things digital marketing, and most specifically around email marketing and building a list and all those kinds of good things we know we need to drive a business. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Charles George. Charles, welcome.
Well, thank you, Sherry, for having me. I appreciate it so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you. So let's see how we can help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can't wait for you to share your wisdom. Charles, just give us a little bit of background on who you are, where you came from, and what you're here to help other business owners with.
Oh my gosh. When I was going through college, my professor taught this thing called direct response marketing. And it wasn't just a class, it was an entire curriculum. And I had a small business at the time, and I immediately started implementing it and started seeing results. So not only was she teaching it in the class, I would go home and implement what I learned and then come back the next day and share it with her. And so that fundamentally changed everything. And
that's awesome.
So to this day, she is still my hero. Her name's Dr. Lisa Spiller, and she just retired 2022. And I was fortunate of 31 years of teaching. I was one of 2 students who got to speak at her retirement celebration. So one of my greatest honors, because she totally changed my life. The whole entire curriculum was dedicated to direct response. So it's what she believed in, it's what she learned, and then she had that same passion and she ignited it in me. And I've been trying to do the same with everybody else I come across too. So.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, what do you mean when you say direct response marketing?
So most companies look at marketing as in brand marketing. So if we take a large, let's say Nike, for instance, if we think back in the day, they created Jordan's shoes for him, right? So he would wear the shoes on the court. He would talk about them and introduce everybody saw him with them. And then they might run an ad in a magazine. They might have an ad during the prequel commercials for a movie on the TV, like different places. Not any of those are really measured. But then as people would walk into the shoe store at Foot Locker or wherever they were buying shoes, there might be a poster with Jordan in those shoes, right? So the idea was we're just going to show all these different spots to remind people of these shoes, and then we can just compare how much we spent to how much that we generated in revenue. The other difference is when they reach out to people, their target audience might be 18 to 34-year-old men for that, right? That's very different with a big company than a small business. One, we don't have the budget to market to 18 to 34-year-old men. So who is our most ideal client? How can we reach them? How can we eliminate everybody else and get really specific on who that person is? And then how can we go about reaching them? And it doesn't have to be expensive necessarily, but what's the best way that we can reach them? Let them know that we can exist. But then with direct marketing, we measure the results. So we measure each ad we do, and we measure what those results were. But most importantly, we're looking at the relationship of that customer and of that prospect. Like, how can we cultivate a long-term relationship? That's the main difference. So we're interested in honing in on who that person is, and then really cultivating relationships with them, which is what I love. And that's why it resonated with me.
So what I'm hearing is there's kind of 3 pieces to it. There's, in direct response marketing, you're narrowing your niche, which you and I both know is the most important thing. And for most small businesses is get that niche as narrow as possible. The second thing you mentioned was that we're measuring results. That the direct response means we've got something that we're doing in the marketing that allows us to measure the response to that. If we send out an email, we know what an open rate is, or if we do an opt-in for a free gift, we know what percentage of people actually opted in. So we've got a measurement. And then the third piece you just mentioned is the relationship and building that long-term relationship with a group of consumers in some respect. Is that fair?
So if you think about the relationship, why is that important? So if we think about when we develop a customer journey for a business, like that can start off with a suspect. It's somebody we think may be interested in our business, but we're not sure. They may fit the criteria, and I can talk about how to segment and ways we can do that. But they may be somebody we think is interested. The next level is they've opted into a list, or they've called, or they've raised their hand and said, I am interested, but they haven't necessarily bought. That would be on email terms, they would subscribe to our list. But the next phase of that is they make a purchase. So it could be the first time they buy something. The next phase of that is now they become a multi-buyer and they buy something else. Then a loyal customer, and then an advocate customer. Okay, so those are our steps in the customer journey. So the value of that is if we're bringing somebody in as a suspect and then a prospect, and then they've raised their hand and we deliver value to them to whether they want to take the next step with their company, like what does that look like? And so how can we deliver value? So it's every email we send, it's every touch point. Like we want to deliver value. Yeah, it's great to ask for them to click the link and to buy, but when they buy, what's that user experience like? Where are we delivering value? Because the more trust we can build with people, the easier it is to get them to ascend, and then the more valuable they become to our business. So that's the value of understanding the relationship. So it's all about relationships. Everything I think in marketing is relationships. We're all about building relationships with people.
Love it. So I know you talk about list building. You talk about email marketing. Tell me more about with direct response marketing. We're building a community basically. Why is building a list so important for particularly smaller entrepreneurs?
Well, good question. So if you think of today online, if we have a podcast, if we have a social media channel, if we rely on people to visit our website, any of those actions, we're relying on that person to connect with us. Okay. So if we make a post on Facebook, we are relying on that algorithm to reach that person, which only a small percentage do. So that's the first challenge. We don't know how many people are going to see that post, right? If we have a podcast, we're not sure how many people are going to download that podcast. They might listen every 3 weeks. They might come once every month. They might listen every episode. We don't know. They might listen one time and not anymore. So what the list does, when people opt into your list, it fundamentally changes the relationship you have with that person, because now you can follow up. So it puts you more in charge of cultivating that relationship. They can still opt out. They can still unsubscribe if the content doesn't match their needs. But that's where the content you send needs to match that audience. That's where you want to deliver that value. You want to be consistent, like most relationships. We want to be consistent. And so we talked about a sitcom versus a blockbuster movie. And so we want to be the sitcom. We don't have a ton of money as small business owners to be the blockbuster movie where blockbuster movie is more of a launch. And if we're just starting out, we can do launches, but a lot of times launches have huge budgets. They hire celebrities. They have their own followings. They cost tons of money to even have them as a celebrity in our movie. That's a launch. We have a concrete deadline of when that goes out, and we're building to that date. So we might drip content initially to intrigue people, but then we're going to build, have more and more content as we push towards that launch. That's a launch. Okay. The sitcom is the opposite. The sitcom, it's low budget. The only advertising they really do initially is the network may advertise on their other channel, during their other shows. They might advertise streaming now. They might promote it on their streaming platform some, but very low cost, unknown actors. They don't know much about them. But the difference is those characters over the first season. Think about an average season is 22 episodes. So with a movie, we might have 3 hours at the most to develop characters, share the whole plot. Whereas with a sitcom, we have 30 minutes to an hour that we can develop those characters. So now people can really get to know those people And so we think of Jennifer Aniston, 10 years of running Friends, people started identifying her as Rachel. There was no difference. The characters are so similar to her real life and how she played her. But that also led her to becoming the celebrity. As her audience grew, her following grew, she became that celebrity where now she's running, doing the movies, the blockbuster movies. And so that's how I think of online marketing. When we're building audiences, everybody starts at zero. We don't have much money. We're just beginning. But as that grows and as our audience grows, email is no different. As our list grows, it starts off small. But if we had 1,000 people and we have a 20% open rate, 200 people are opening that email. If we had 20,000, now we just have the same 20% open rate, 4,000 people are opening that email. We can calculate this down to clicks and click percentages and those things, and it still follows these same formulas. But just as your audience grows, your chances of success grow just because more people are watching you. They're starting to get to know you. That's what builds the trust, and that's what cultivates that relationship. So makes conversion so much easier.
Right.
So.
Well, and the other thing that comes up for me is we talk about our communities, and so many entrepreneurs think of their communities as their Facebook community, their LinkedIn community. And the fact of the matter is we don't own those communities. Those platforms own those communities. So we always want to get those people off of LinkedIn, off of Facebook, off of Instagram, off of YouTube, onto our platform, whatever that is, so that we can truly drive that relationship and take it the direction we want to go anytime we want to, versus having to do a Instagram story or some such thing to take the next step in the relationship. So I think as entrepreneurs, we cannot undervalue our lists. I mean, the community that we build, that we own, whatever you want to call that, I call it your list. I think most people do, is your biggest asset in your business. There's just no question. So tell me, like, if newer entrepreneurs are listening, I'll ask you the question. If you had it to do all over again, I'll ask it in a different context for today. If you had it to do all over again, how would you build a list as a new entrepreneur?
So think about this, like there's 3 stages of building a list, okay? We have to build it. So it's not just building the list, because once we have it, then what are we going to do with it, right? So I think of 3 stages, and we can add a 4th stage on the end. And that goes back to our relationships with our customers. So the very first one is, how are we going to build that list, right? So it starts with, who is our ideal customer? Who is it? Right back to direct response. Where are they? How can we reach them? So are there other people that we can partner with that already have lists? That's one of the best ways to do it. How can we collaborate with them? How can we create unique experiences so we can collaborate together to get them to say yes, right? How can you structure a relationship, or how can you structure an offer if you don't have a list? And let's say they have a list of 20 or 30,000 people. Like, what value can you provide to them where they would permit? Maybe they already know you, maybe it's a previous relationship, but if not, do you know somebody who already knows them that can give you a referral, introduce the two of you? LinkedIn and Facebook are great for this because they tell you who your mutual connections are. So it's a great way to network. You just reach out to them. Hey, I know Sherry. I'd love to meet Sherry. Is there any way you would introduce me to her through Messenger or email? Most people absolutely say yes to that if they already know you. Now you're coming in warm versus just reaching out cold. We can reach out cold on LinkedIn and Facebook to connect with people too. But how can we get them to say yes? What can we do to provide value? There's lots of things we can do. Like, what's something that's beneficial for them? So can we do a straight swap? Well, now if they have a list that's 3 times ours, maybe we can do that. But if their list is much bigger than ours, so can we barter? Can we write email copy for them? What's something that we could do to provide value in exchange for them promoting and building our list? The only thing you really need is a lead magnet and a landing page for this, and that's the easiness of building these lists. Knowing who you're after, who else is in there. So that's the first stage. How are we going to build it? The next stage is we got to engage them. Once we start getting people on a list, we can't wait till we've got 5,000 people and now we'll start engaging. No, we start engaging when that first person comes on. That's your welcome email. That's, what are you saying to set the tone for that relationship? What are the boundaries you're setting? So many people, I see so many welcome emails that don't set the stage for the relationship. But when you meet somebody and you're getting to know somebody, we immediately set those boundaries. And as we get to know them, we expand, right? The amount of time we spend with them, same thing. Establish that relationship from that very first email so they know what to expect, and then follow through on the promises in that email. So that's the first thing. Next, how are we going to continue to engage? Newsletters. They're a great way to continue to engage with people. So normally I send between 1 and 3 emails a week. Depends on the list. But newsletter, I can send 2 promotional emails. Sometimes I'll send 4. It just very depends on, but just start simple. Start with a newsletter once a week. That will get you going. That will help engage them. You just share your thoughts, share your journey as you're going through this process. You don't have to be the expert, but tell your story and let people see that transformation. Far more powerful than you coming in, like, you can share your expertise, but talk to people about the journey that you're going through, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and let them follow you. That ties into the sitcom again and how they build those characters out. So that's engage. So if we're looking at metrics for the engage, I'm looking at open rates. I'm looking at click-through rates. I'm looking at, as people start opening and they start clicking, guess what? They start buying after that, but it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in stages. It's always the opens, the clicks, and then the buys. And so we can track this. And as people start clicking more, then they start buying. Rarely does it happen the other way. So that's where open rates come into play. If we're looking at the last phase of conversion, email is not designed to convert. That's your sales page. That's setting up a one-on-one call if you're doing a coach to see if you're a good fit. That's where conversion happens. We can still track it and relate it to that email. How many people clicked through, how many people bought on that landing page. Now we're getting conversion rates. So the value of all of this is, as we're building this out, we can make multiple offers, from affiliate links, our own products, other products. We can have ads, we can sell ads within our list as it grows. So there's multiple ways to generate revenue. What that does is it increases the customer value. Why is that important? Well, as that customer value increases, it gives us more money to go build the list. And so now everything's becoming perpetual. So as our customer value grows, it doesn't start there. It might just be a report for $10 we sell. It was our first product. And here's something we can make money with. But as that grows, then we can put more money back into building that list. So that's the third stage, is the conversion. So we're really looking at those conversion numbers. What's the average email I send when I have that? Like, what's the average value of that email? What's my earnings per click? So those are numbers I start looking at for conversion. But everything becomes perpetual,
Wow.
The back end starts fueling the front end, but it doesn't start there. It takes time to build that out.
So that was a lot packed into that. So give me the I don't know, call it 30-second version of the 3 steps again.
Okay, so the 3 steps are build, engage, convert, right? So that's what we're going to do. So the build stage, we just want to build the list. We're just looking at, can we set a landing page up and can we get people to opt into our list? That's all we're trying to do. If we're going to measure rates, what's the conversion rate of that opt-in page? That's it. That's what we want to do to start with, okay? Once we have them engaged, once we move to engage, now we're going to look at that welcome email. What are our open rates? Can we send a newsletter once a week? Okay. Once we do that, can we measure what our open and click-through rates are? Keep it simple. And then the third phase, as that list grows, is the conversion. So with conversion, we're just looking at what's the conversion rate, how many people are clicking, how many are buying. That will give us a conversion rate of that sales page. And so those are the simplest ways. So build, engage, convert, everything falls into those 3 categories as we're building these lists and as we're building relationships with people. So,
oh, that's awesome. That gives a great summary of the three phases to building, engaging, and converting the list to clients. Love it. So you mentioned you send 1 to 3 emails a week, typically. One of the things I find from my clients so often is it's like you tell them even 1 to 3 times a week, and they're like, I can't send email that much. People will think that I'm salesy. What's your response to that?
So my response to that is this, is I've worked with a bunch of clients who sent an email once every quarter. Okay. And I came in and I said, that's great, but once a quarter, your unsubscribe rates are up because they forget who you are. Whereas if you're emailing on a regular basis, think about if you don't see somebody for a long time, those aren't your, like, you can have a relationship with somebody who's your best friend, and then you go off and don't see each other for a couple of years and pick right back up, right? But normally when we build relationships, it goes from we don't know people and we go through those stages of getting to know them. And as we build more trust with them, as we get to know them, we communicate more, we hang out more, we spend more time. That's how it works. So if we're emailing once a week is minimum, pretty much all the email marketing providers recommend at least once a week. So if we're going to email once a week, send a newsletter. Just deliver content. Just talk to people about what's happening, how that's beneficial to them. That's the first step. So in that one newsletter, they had about a 9% open rate. And by me just sending on a weekly basis, I was able to get it up to about a 22% open rate. That makes a big difference. Our unsubscribes are way down because now they expected it. And so setting those expectations of what you're doing, then following through, as you said, the commitment, the consistency, that's a sitcom. It shows up every day, same time, same week. So
Very cool. So where do you think people make the biggest mistakes in terms of when they're starting out, and where do the mistakes happen? What are the things we should avoid in the early stages of building our community, our list?
Well, I think of it like this, right? When I think of the word failure, what do I think of the word failure? I think as long as we're learning and we're growing, then we're winning. We can run a marketing campaign and everything blows up in our face, but guess what? We learned something. We may have learned what not worked, but we learned something. That allows us to start again with more information. That means next time we'll be better. So when we're looking at a lot of campaigns, rarely do they come out of the gates like running, blazing hot, right? Normally we go through this process of optimizing. When we're starting out, it's no different. So when people start out, a couple of things I noticed, they don't have their targeting right as far as who their ideal audience is. That will build a list that's not geared to you. But also as we grow, sometimes that shifts and changes a little bit. That's okay. You can still bring those people along with you as you're communicating with them and letting them know about these shifts. So that would be the first one. Not starting to build their list fast enough is number two. I think it's great to build social media followings. I think it's great, but we don't own any of that. We own our website and our list. That's it. Everything else is rented. And so we should use these other things, but how can we use them to build our businesses versus building those other businesses? So if we have a book on Amazon, how can we leverage that to build our list? If we have a social media following, how can we leverage that to build our list? So always think about how can I build my list with any assets or resources we have. So every list I've worked with, they're all different because every business has different resources, different assets. So every one I've built has been different, but that's okay because whatever you have, leverage it to build that list. So does that answer your question?
That. Yeah, I love that. Love that. Love that. Very cool. This has been awesome. I mean, I love, you and I have talked a lot that we always seem to be on the same wavelength in terms of the things we talked about. And I love your build, engage, convert, and thinking about it in those terms, because whether it's email or it's live from stage, it's the same kinds of things that we're doing in order to turn those into clients. Very cool. So as you know, this series is called If I'd Only Known. And I always like to ask everybody the same question. So the question I have for you is, if you had known what you know now when you started your business, what would you tell your new entrepreneur self?
I thought about this, and I think you probably can guess where I'm going to go with this. And so in my career, I built so many lists over the years for so many different clients. Okay. I've taken lists from less than 100 to tens of thousands. I've taken lists that had tons of people that weren't converting and turned them around so they were converting. But in the process of all this, I neglected my list in so many areas. And so the means of me helping so many others, one, it built my skills. So there's, again, no failure in anything. But I didn't build my list nearly as early as what I've recommended to others, per se. And so I would have started much earlier building my list. And that's where I would have started, Sherry.
Yeah.
Even more focused on my own list. It's a process, right? We're all learning.
Yeah.
There's no failure in any of this, because gosh knows I've got the skills, and so I would have started much earlier, and really fine tuning on my own list more so than so many others. But I'm grateful I served. That's the thing. I'm so grateful because that all led to my skill sets also. So
Right. And wherever you are is perfect. Just start from today.
yep,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, Charles, how can people get in touch with you and get more of your breadth of knowledge around direct response marketing?
Well, sure. Well, thank you for having me, Sherry. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
So publishtothrive.com is my website. So there I talk about how to leverage your ideas into a lifetime of books, products, and services. What I talk about on that site, people have been talking about direct response and publishing has been going on for 100 years. So I talk about some of those the way some of the legendary direct response marketers all the way to today's. But if you really want to build a list, just go to publishtothrive.com/report. And there you'll find a report on 7 ways to consistently add new subscribers to your email list. So publishtothrive.com/report, and you can find that report there. So.
Love it. Well, I'm going to go to your website and get that list, that free gift, because I'm always about building my list and adding new people to my community so that I can broaden my reach and make a difference with more people. Because at the end of the day, that's why most of us are here. Absolutely. Well, Charles, thank you so much. I loved your insight on direct response marketing and your insight in terms of what you would do differently. Any parting thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I would say start early and start fast. And you don't have to have everything figured out, but it's the process of beginning. So even if we just start building that list, we can build the back end of everything else as we go. But at least have an idea of who you want to serve, and immediately, how can I go build this list, reach out to people and start doing it. So
love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you very much again, Charles. Thank you for being here, and go be you.
thank you. Thank you so much, Sherry, for having me. I appreciate it so much.